Yeah, we talked yesterday afternoon already about migrating Fedora, and I think there's a big need to do some migration, and I will talk a little bit in detail about my experience with migrating Fedora. My name is Oliver Schöner. I'm working at the Berlin State Library as some sort of repository manager, and amongst many other software, I'm dealing with Fedora. So to do some migration is a very common situation in libraries. You often have, one moment, old and sometimes dangerous applications, and you have data within these applications. For example, in relational databases who do not obey any standards, and often it happens you have no description and you are forced to transform these data and make them available in another application. Or you want to convert data from Oracle to MySQL and the like, and what should, in theory, work easily. In reality, it deserves its own project. And the situation is not very different with Fedora. We had adopted Fedora 4 in 2016. And up to now, all our Fedora 4 instances work well, but we want to look a little bit forward. Someday, these instances might not work any longer, so it seems reasonable to move them to newer versions when they are available. And of course, the OCFL invented some years ago, it seems very attractive for us. And so we thought we should move a little bit Fedora 4. And we decided to choose a quite small collection, which should be a proof of concept. If that works well, then we would proceed with other collections. And my expectation would be that, of course, migration can take some time, but it shouldn't be rocket science, nor I should work the whole day on it during weeks or so. And basically, you could say it should be, it should take much less time to migrate the data than to re-ingest them. Which also could be an option. And the example I want to talk today is AGZ and AGST. Some of you might know these collections. These are the judgments of the Prussian High Court between 1879 and 1945. This is a small repository. It consists of about 30,000 documents. Originally, these were scanned images, then transformed to PDF files with a pseudo XML description with no standards at all, but which we transformed to Fedora. And now the structure is very well defined, and when we see trouble in one document, we can be sure the same should happen to another document. And this tended to be a quite good idea because as I show you, the migration was not difficult, but it was quite complicated in the end. So, but let's have a look step by step. We started with our Fedora 4.5.1 version. And this one we had to move to 4.6.1 version. I know we should have done this we should have done this earlier, but we didn't. And here I could see the first problem, because when I tried to do this on a modern server, it didn't work any longer because Java 8 was needed. So with older versions of Java, I couldn't do that migration. Then when we had it, I made a backup of 4.6.1, which worked well. And the next step was to restore this 4.6.1 backup to a 4.7.5 version. This worked well again. And then we exported this Fedora repository to a TTL serialization. I think most of you might have seen these TTL files, just a serialization of RDF structure. And by the way, this was very useful for us. For some weeks ago, a partner library had asked us if we could give them the data stored in the repository. And we asked us, oh, how could we do that? Shall we give them the original files with the original description, or can we hand over just the repository as a whole? And it turned out that the serialization, including the binary files, that was quite very handy. After that serialization, we had to upgrade these files to a 5.1.1 version, and then in the next and last step, upgrade to Fedora 6. Yeah. I think this is just a bunch of steps. It's not so you had one version and one program could it could end up in Fedora 6, but there are various steps, and every step had its peculiarities. But finally, here we are. Now we got the Fedora 6 with the new created OCFL files up and running. Unfortunately, especially the last step had some minor problems. For example, some parameters were not totally documented, and I had a problem get Fedora 6 running at all, because there was still a minor bug in the alpha version and in the beta version as well. But with the help of Peter Winkles, I could resolve this. So my advice would always be, in such a situation, ask the community. Don't do it by yourself, but in every step, ask the people, and you get an answer. And I hope my persistent questions in Slack and in the mailing lists were helpful for the community and the developers as well, because I think they got some clues to identify some minor bugs and could remove them in a really non-critical stadium of the development of Fedora 6. You see the end, but it's still not the end. There have to be some tests. How does the repository behave now? I still don't know. And we built a Samvera application on top of it for this collection. And does it behave the same way? We will see. I still do not know, but I think even if there should be something to do in the application, that shouldn't be difficult anyway. So in the end, although it was a quite long way, my conclusion is quite positive in two ways. The documentation was quite good. There's always something missing, but in the end, everything could be found, and if you had an answer, if you had a question, it got answered always, and speed was quite nice. I don't want to provide real figures here, but because it doesn't make sense, I did this migration on a very tiny machine. But I think migration should be at least at 10 times as fast as re-ingest the data. So more or less like just copying the data from one server to another. In the OSFL file system do appear new files which have not before then, but that's all. In the end, everything worked out quite fast. So, so I'm at the end now. Thank you for your attention. And if you have special questions, you can write me an email, of course.